Chapter 19. Creakerland. Lucy sprinted down the tunnel, following it deeper into the Woleb. The screams were growing louder with every step she took. She rounded a crooked corner, and the spider-leg tunnel opened up into a great cave, stretching out far above her head where the roots of trees poked through mud and dirt. The sticky ground beneath her feet suddenly became a row of neat, polished green paving stones, and this path led down to something so strange Lucy had to take off her swimming goggles to get a proper look at it. Right in front of her was a ginormous underground theme park. It was massive, bigger than any fairground or theme park Lucy had ever seen. Further along the path was a giant entrance with bright, shiny turnstiles and a curly-swirly sign over the top that said, "Welcome to Creakerland, the no fun fair, where dreams definitely don't come true, the most miserable place below the earth." But Lucy knew that in the Woleb this meant that this was a fun place, a place where dreams do come true. But whose dreams? Lucy asked herself, quietly so the Woleb wouldn't hear her thoughts. Her mind was interrupted by the screams again, as the carriages of an enormous roller coaster whizzed by and did a huge loop-the-loop high up over her head, the track skimming the cavernous, rooty roof above. The seats of the roller coaster were packed with passengers dressed in their pyjamas and nighties, all waving their hands high above their heads. And that's when Lucy realised two things. The passengers in the roller coaster cars were all grown-ups, and it was these grown-ups who were screaming, but they weren't screaming in pain or fear. They were screaming with laughter and happiness. Lucy saw their faces as the roller coaster shot by. They were giddy with excitement. Wild, childish smiles stretched across their faces as they waved their arms in the air. "What the jiggins?" thought Lucy, as she rushed down the shiny green path to the turnstile and gave it a push. It spun round and whacked her on the bottom, shoving her into Creakerland. She was suddenly hit by the most delicious, sweet smell. Lucy closed her eyes and breathed it in deeply. It was the smell of sugar and caramel, freshly baked cookies and steaming hot chocolate. It was the nicest thing she'd smelled since being down here, and seemed completely out of place in this rotten world. As she looked around, she couldn't believe what she was seeing. There were rides and roller coasters that looked so mind-bogglingly fun that she found herself being drawn towards them, desperately wanting to ride them. Some had stomach-churning twists soaring so high it hurt her neck to keep looking at them. There was a merry-go-round that whizzed around so fast and didn't stop until the grown-ups riding it couldn't hold on any longer. They just let go, flying into the sky, landing in huge piles of pink stuff. "Candy floss," Lucy whispered in amazement as she watched the grown-ups eat their way out of these pink fluffy piles of deliciousness, which were as tall as the houses of Whiffington. There were popcorn machines on the rooftops of all the buildings, continuously popping fresh, buttery popcorn, which burst into the air and fell like warm, delicious popcorn snow over their heads. A large pink milkshake river flowed round a silver castle in the centre of it all. Lucy rubbed her eyes and saw that the castle was in fact made of hundreds and thousands of sparkling silver dustbins, stacked high on top of one another. "Wow," Lucy said out loud. This place really was strangely amazing. She couldn't help but want to dive into the milkshake river and go for a swim with her mouth wide open. Two women skipped by, holding hands, eating enormous lollipops and giggling like little kids as they played in the falling popcorn, trying to catch it on their tongues. "Excuse me," Lucy called to them, but the women turned and blew raspberries at her, then ran away, laughing. As Lucy watched them go, a crowd of men burst out of a toy shop, kicking a brand new football. "On your head," one of them called, and toe-punted the ball so hard it smashed through the shop window, showering the street with glass. The men fell about laughing. "Nice one, Simon," another man said. "Let's drink some cream soda and go on the rides until we puke again." Lucy, who didn't usually consider puking very funny, found that a little giggle was making its way out of her mouth. "Oh," she said, taking herself by surprise. Just then, a great blast of trumpets broke out from the far end of Main Street, Creakerland. "Oh, it's a parade!" cried an elderly man next to Lucy, beaming and turning a cartwheel as a row of giant floats began cruising their way down the street. Crowds of all the grown-ups of Whiffington suddenly emerged from the Main Street shops and attractions. The video game arcade, the ice cream spa, the comic book library, the hot fudge hot tub, and the petting zoo, filling the street to watch. Wrinkly Mr. Ratcliffe was there in his underpants. Molly, the milk lady, was handing out Woleb milkshakes, and even Mario was jogging backwards along Main Street. Then Lucy spotted Mrs. Fudge McScroodles, who owned Scrummy McScroodle's Sweets and Stuff, Old Man Carvey, who ran the butcher's, Page Turner, the librarian, and even Piers Snorrigan from Wakey Wakey Whiffington. They were all here in Creakerland, having fun in their pyjamas. The grown-ups whooped and cheered as the parade came past, as though they were having the time of their lives. It was fun, but Lucy couldn't help but feel that this was all wrong. These childlike people around her were the grown-ups who should be up in Whiffington with their children and families, not down here. Lucy turned away, her mind racing. A lady with curly white hair skipped past her, holding a large chalk ice. The chocolate was melting in her hands, making them sticky and messy. The lady tossed the melting chalk ice on the ground, and it landed with a splodge right at Lucy's feet. "Excuse me, aren't you going to clean that up?" Lucy asked. The lady's expression changed from a sort of hypnotic excitement to utter hysterics. "Clean it up? Ha ha ha!" she called. "Good one! I'm off to get a fresh chalk ice. Want one?" As much as Lucy would have loved a chalk ice, she knew that there was some sort of Woleb magic at work here, and the magical chalk ices were not to be trusted. "No thanks," she replied, and watched the old woman run full speed down Main Street to the chalk ice vending machine, faster than a kid running downstairs on Christmas morning. As the woman disappeared, another grown-up came into view. Lucy stared at the distant figure. Then, as she realised what she was seeing, she clapped her hands over her eyes and peered through her fingers. It was an awful sight, which she was afraid she could never unsee. It was Ella's father, the mayor of Whiffington, but he wasn't wearing any clothes. At all. Lucy groaned as Mayor Noying, who was usually very serious indeed, ran down Main Street completely naked. He was covering up his funny bits with a ridiculous Creakerland mayor's hat, screaming, "I'm Mayor of Creakerland, and I declare this the best place ever," at the top of his lungs. Lucy quickly shut her eyes tightly as his bare bottom whizzed past her and disappeared down Main Street. "I couldn't agree more," said Piers Snorrigan, as his film crew captured the mayor's naked moment. "That's about all from me, Piers Snorrigan. See you tomorrow for another Wakey Wakey Woleb." He winked smugly at the camera before the broadcast ended, and the film crew high-fived each other. "I'm never telling Ella about this," Lucy muttered to herself. She stared at the chaos around her. What the jiggins is going on? She wondered. Why are all the grown-ups acting so... And just like that, she understood why the grown-ups weren't acting like grown-ups anymore. It was all so blindingly obvious that Lucy slicked her hair over and slapped herself on the forehead for not realising it sooner. Of course, she thought, this is the twisted work of the Woleb again. Everything in this place was different. It was backwards, and the grown-ups were no exception. Because the grown-ups weren't grown-ups down here. They were naughty and silly and fun, like children. And most importantly of all, they were messy. Lucy looked around at all the litter on the ground. There were sweet wrappers, greasy fish and chip papers, lollipop sticks, bottles and cans. There were scattered jelly babies and drips of chocolate. There were bits of broken glass and piles of discarded popcorn. There was litter everywhere. Just what the Creakers wanted, Lucy realised. The grown-ups had been snatched away into the Woleb and had forgotten about their lives. This place had erased their responsibilities. It had made them forget all the stresses and worries of the real world and remember instead what it was like to be children, to simply have fun, a life without consequence. It was only then that Lucy realised the true meaning of the word she hated. Impossible. How was she ever going to fix this mess? Impossible is just in your mind. Impossible is just in your mind, Lucy repeated to herself. At that moment, she heard a laugh she recognised, and spun round. She looked down the glistening green paved street and saw a giddy girl tumble out of the exit of the waltzer, fall to the shiny floor and begin rolling around in a fit of giddy giggles. "Let's do it again," she said, laughing. Lucy stared. It was her mum.